Hi, welcome to this presentation called You Want to Build Medical Device Software question mark. I'm Richie Kosh from Kosh Freisite. So this is a video for developers wanting to expand their customer base and perhaps build medical device software for their clients, entrepreneurs wanting to launch their own software as a medical device, and also for experts who are either SaMD or 13485 regulatory experts, maybe just looking for a different perspective on how to do things. So why would you be interested in developing software as a medical device? Well, there's a number of reasons. It's a very fast growing market. There's still plenty of opportunities around. Um, I think there's a shortage of experts out there. Large companies have invested heavily and they've got their internal experts, but you go out there on the market, it's a bit patchy on who you find, and the good ones are all booked up. You have the opportunity to have a wide-reaching impact with your product because it's software. You have almost a zero marginal cost of replication or serving another customer. So, if you do have a good idea out there with therapeutic benefit, you can get that around the world and help a lot of people. And then finally, there's a profit motive. Medical device generally has good margins. So what is software as a medical device? This is from the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, which is a great website to look at if you're getting into this space, or even if you're already in the space. Well, I'm sure you know about it then. I just search for IMDRF on Google, the website will come up. But the term software as a medical device is defined as software, clearly, intended to be used for one or more medical purposes, and we'll discuss what a medical purpose is in the next slide, that perform these purposes without being part of a hardware medical device. So that's really important. This is also called standalone software. So, a very simple example would be a mobile application that just runs standalone on a phone or, potentially on a computer. Software that runs, for example, an MRI machine, that's not software as a medical device because that's integrated as part of the hardware medical device. So what is a medical purpose? This ultimately is driven by the local regulations, and there's a process to go through to determine if you're carrying out a medical purpose that's to be regulated. But generally, this definition is as follows. So it's intended by the manufacturer to be used alone or in combination for human beings. So again, human beings, not animals, for example, for one or more of the specific medical purposes of diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or alleviation of disease, diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, alleviation of, or compensation for an injury, investigation, replacement, modification, or support of the anatomy or of a physiological process, supporting or sustaining life, control of conception. So this is a wide-reaching definition across basically, a lot of devices can deliver this. Some of this will not be, be very difficult to have software as a medical device. For example, do a knee replacement as a silly example. But the important thing here is you need to work out what it is doing. So these terms, diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or alleviation, they tend to be the key terms in this. Um, yeah, so go have a look at that, and if you've got any questions, we can discuss it at another time. So the basic difference between software as a medical device and software that's not a medical device is medical device software performs a medical function, and non-medical software does not perform a medical function, clearly. So to develop SaMD, there's a few more things you need than just standard software. And this is where a lot of people maybe get a bit scared and run away, understandably, because there is a lot of information here to become expert in. But just like anything you undertake, there's two rules which are the foundation of success, which is start and don't stop. So if you're really interested in this, take the time to learn it, read. Look, it's not super difficult, and you can get a lot of help out there. And a lot of these regulations, you just got to read the page. And if you don't understand what's on there, there's a lot of resource out there to help you interpret what's on the page. So just get going would be my advice. So you need a 13485 ISO 13485 compliant quality management system. So ISO 13485 is an international standard for how medical device companies should manage their business and their processes. You need to be registered with a notified body because the notified body is empowered by government to issue certificates to say that you are actually certified. So that's really important. So if you want to produce, market any regulated medical device, generally, there are exceptions, you need a 13485 certificate. You need a software as a medical device compliant design and development procedure. And there's an international standard called IEC 62304, which covers that. Uh, I think people who are in the agile world can read it, understand it. There are some peculiar things and checks you need to do related to software and again that medical functionality, but worth having a read. Your risk file is really, really important in any medical product. You need to demonstrate that you've considered all the hazards and the risk and the potential harm to your users, that risk has been mitigated, it's acceptable, and if there is any remaining risk, that the risk benefit, the balance actually is in the side of the benefit, not the risk. So 14971 is a medical device international, the ISO standard for medical device risk management, and you need validated, verified medical functionality. This can mean, simple as a clinical review, or you may have to run your own clinical trials to get the evidence to support that your medical functionality, is clinically valid. Liability insurance is important. Uh, you probably need a quality manager to run and manage your 13485 processes, and you'll have annual audits, and there's a bunch of things you need to do to maintain your certification. You'll also need some medical expertise, chief medical officer or similar, somebody who has the licenses and the qualifications to be able to build your medical file and prove that you've got the medical functionality there. And finally, like any project, you need development team and budget. You do need a little bit more budget here to um, build it because you've got a few more overheads, and obviously you can't market until the whole thing's built at the end. So last I read, the average cost of building software as a medical device is apparently about $500,000 per project. That could be less, that can be more. There are smart ways to reduce the cost, and we can talk about that in another video if anybody's interested. So what I want to do just as a final wrap up to this is go through an overview of the requirements process. I'm going to present this in a very linear way, just to keep it simple. In reality, it's a little bit more dynamic and there's interrelation between some of these steps, but it should give you some overview. So you start with the patient needs. This can be a combination of their medical needs with just general non-medical needs. You build that out into a set of requirements, so functional requirements. For example, user has to log on to the account. To non-functional requirements, this can be your cloud infrastructure, your network, what apps you run on, etc. Security. Regulatory requirements. This requires you to look at things like your ISO 13485 certification, um, to also have a look at the countries you want to launch in. So look at the FDA requirements, Australia, TGA, Europe's, the medical device regulation requirements, etc., and understand what you need to do to comply. You need to look at your clinical evidence you need. And again, there's an interrelation here between the regulatory rules and what you need to provide to meet those regulatory rules. And then the core of the product as well is the risk management. You need a risk management file and start identifying hazards, mitigating actions, which will cycle back into some of your requirements. That, at least the way we do it, we break it into work streams, which you could say is a very broad sort of architecture, but not necessarily a product architecture, more a design architecture about how we think about the product and what, how we build it in our work streams. We then write design briefs on each of the work streams. So for example, you might have design brief on security, You might have a design brief on user management, which could be everything from sign in, sign up, profile management, deleting accounts, etc. Work stream on, for example, data privacy protection, complying to GDPR or the data privacy regulations, etc., etc., etc. And again, even before you go in development, if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about doing this, you can do a lot of this by yourself without actually spending a cent. It's up to you. Everybody can read, everybody can write, and you can learn how to do this. And if you are thinking about doing this, I would highly recommend spending some time building this out because it will save you a lot of money in the future because you can actually go to a development house with some very good requirements and get some very strong quotes, which you can manage then because you know exactly what you're building. Um, but again, we can talk about managing developers in a different video. So the way we do it, again, we take these design briefs and we put them into a very high level requirements board in Jira. So we run two boards during the development. For those who don't know, Jira is a software development tool. It basically helps you manage your development tickets and what you're producing, and you manage them in an agile way. I don't come from a software development background, so you know there are plenty more videos out there you can find on agile development. But for us, what's really important, we use the requirements board and a development board, and that acts as our interface. That becomes our design inputs. So in the requirements board, we will just have a very simple ticket for a design brief. So for example, user management is a good one. You know, that maybe to do those user managements, you've got 4 or 5 core functionalities, sign in, sign up, etc. And that could explode into, I don't know, 100 development tickets or more. In the functional requirements, in the back end, what you've got to do, different things. But what's really important here, we do the traceability. So when we create a development ticket, we put the source there. We know it comes from requirement ticket 1, and from requirement ticket 1, we know it comes from, for example, design brief 1. And that's really important. You get that traceability of requirements all the way through your development process. And then also we have our workflows, particularly for the requirements board, which is a simplified workflow, but it allows us to focus on, you know, what are we working on, what are we releasing, et cetera, and we can actually use that as a very simple project plan. It simplifies things incredibly. And then the development board, typical, you know, you need a business analyst to manage that and keep your development teams moving forward. So this is what our development board workflow looks like. Tickets move into development, so from the backlog. So backlog just meaning you've got a list of things to do. We move them into development, into a sprint. They developed, go into code review, some level of QA, what we call UAT validation. So we do some internal testing with users, or we've got a testing group, not necessarily customers at that point, but we just do some double checking on any automated testing, make sure it's doing what it should be doing. Depending on what we're releasing, there will be some end user verification. So we run releases on a patch, minor upgrade, major upgrade. Generally major upgrades, well, major upgrades in our rules need some end user verification testing. And especially if you're doing sort of any medical functionality, you need the verification. And this can be from clinical trials or potentially some validation that your clinical review is actually working as it should. And then we move into release. And the final slide, um, people, I'm sure a lot of people will have seen this V diagram. It's a very simplified version, but I think for me, it identifies the key points you want to do in your verification validation activities. So we've seen how we go from a patient needs into requirements, into design development, and then we do the testing, verification steps, and then release, and there's an area called post-market surveillance. Uh, and what you're trying to do in each of the steps, once you've got something that's code that's been developed, you do user acceptance testing. You're just validating that what you've produced actually matches your design tickets. Then when you go to your end users, you want to verify that you've actually met the requirements, so the end users will tell you if you've got it or not. And here they may have told you something very, very different in the beginning, and they go, well, no, that's not actually what I wanted. So that's really good feedback too. And then once it's released, you have some post-market surveillance, and that can be passive. People contact you, or it can be active. You go out there and you survey or interview your customers, and that can give you a cycle back into new needs for your patients, user needs, etc. And then you go on this continual improvement cycle. So, you could look into IEC 62304. They've got a V there, which is a lot more complicated than this, and there's a bunch of them out there. So, but the point being that a key part of any sort of, I guess, good software development, but especially medical device software development, is you need to validate and verify what you're doing, and then make sure you get that post-market surveillance feedback. And these are all formalized systems as part of your quality system. So that's it for today. Hopefully that was useful to somebody. First video on the channel, so we'll see if anybody watches. Like I said, yeah, please comment below, or if you've got any questions, you can go to the website and submit a question through the contact form. We'll get back to you. We don't do a lot of consulting. We've got our own product, but we do take up certain projects at certain times. So if you want a chat or some advice, let us know, tell us what you need, and we can always arrange a time to catch up. So thank you, wish you a good day, and good luck with your SaMD projects.